Hi there, so today we're going to be looking at some key binding theory rather than a specific technique. Before I've only ever done techniques, which is great if you're learning from scratch, but not brilliant if you're an established player who perhaps wants to optimize without adopting something completely new. Hopefully this series of videos will help you do that optimization and give you some food for thought about the way your hand works and wrist positioning and balance. So first of all, we're going to look at specific fingers. I think this is perhaps the most important part of key binding techniques because it's about working to your individual strengths, and a lot of gamers overlook it when actually it will define a great player. So first we have the index finger. Now the index finger is great for movement because it has very fine control. However, it's not brilliant with the wrist because if you look, it moves on an arcing motion as you move the wrist around. So if you're doing a wrist heavy technique, you need to watch out for this because it can reduce accuracy. However, it's very strong in its own right. If you want to spam with it without moving the wrist, then it's actually pretty effective. So next we have the right middle finger. Now this finger is fantastic when it comes to moving with the wrist because it can move directly up and down with it, and because it's long, you have very low risk of hitting other keys at the same time as moving your wrist. However, it is useless when combined with this finger because they can't move separately, which means that you end up with both of them going down at the same time, which is completely suboptimal. So lastly, we have the little finger. Now the little finger is really flexible, which is fantastic for using cooldowns and that kind of thing. However, it's not very strong, so I wouldn't use it on stuff that you need to cast very often, as you'll quickly grow fatigued and end up struggling in the raid. Now, if we think about hand positioning, and particularly the finger bending, you want to have your fingers at a steady curve at all times. The ideal is to be able to reach the top section when it's out flat, because flat is the best for fine control, in my opinion. However, the more you go down into a claw position, the less control you have, because pressing keys is actually quite difficult like that. You end up spamming it with your fingernail and that kind of thing. Now, obviously, the best way to do this is to set your fingers on the keyboard so that they're flat out and touching the outermost keys that you want to press in your particular technique, and then curve them in until they hit an optimal resting point. This will allow you to be able to move out and also go down with minimal claw-like position of your hand. So ideally you want to have your hand in a position where it's stretched out as much as you can, hitting all the keys that you want to use with your cooldowns. So let's say that is the furthest I want my hand to reach for this particular technique. Let's imagine that for now. And then you know that you want to rest your hand in this position by default. So you bring your hand into that position without moving your wrist. This allows you to know that you can stretch out, but then also come down here without going into too much of a claw position. Whereas if you start like this, then you can often end up with slightly weird hand positions, although that is quite good if you might want to reach further, obviously. Now, wrist anchoring. I often find that you want to move your wrist a lot, particularly in games which revolve a lot around pressing the same key very fast, like WoW. This is because the wrist is a lot stronger than any other muscle in your hand, for obvious reasons. It's bigger, and that will reduce fatigue and allow you to keep going for longer play sessions. However, the wrist is low accuracy, so if you're wanting to move your hand around a lot on the keyboard and press lots of different keys, then it will find that you end up not being able to move as efficiently and pressing wrong keys a lot. At that point, you might want to move your hand around a lot more and do more of a kind of crab motion, I guess, with your individual fingers to keep up that speed. Whereas for single motion, the wrist is a lot stronger and you keep your hand flat. Now, try to think when you're positioning your hand about a central pivot. I often find the middle finger is a good pivot because it's the longest and you can kind of move over to either side of that. That also means that it negates the fact that the two middle fingers can't move separately, because you can go around that finger and then move over to that side to press with that second middle finger. So lastly, we're going to be looking at the expansion of your fingers. Now, obviously, try and keep the movement up and down as much as possible, because you will find that your fingers have most flexibility there. If you try and move your fingers from side to side, you'll also reduce accuracy, but also you'll end up moving your wrist more, which is not ideal. Now, obviously, a lot of games will require you to move from side to side. In that scenario, try and use your little finger, because it's really easy to move your little finger around, more so than any other finger. If I start trying to move my index finger, as you can see, my entire wrist starts to move to compensate for that. That's probably because the tendons go down right low, but I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that. Now, If you are going to expand outwards, the best thing to do is expand outwards and upwards at the same time, because as you can see, your hand is very good at stretching out like that, whereas down low, it's quite difficult to move your hands out without ending up with some slightly weird wrist motions going on, which is not great in terms of anchoring and accuracy. So thank you for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed this short video just on some of the theories I use to design my key binding techniques, and hopefully it will inform you and make you a better player in the long run. Do leave a like if you did enjoy it, and please feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of my stuff. There will be more coming in the near future, I promise. And best of wishes, and hope you see you next time.